Alright, so week 2 VOD review. As always, I'm just going to go over my team first, and then I'll do the matches, and then I'll put the timestamps in the description so that you can skip straight to it if you want to skip over the team or go straight to your match. So this week I used... I kind of mashed together a couple concepts. I thought Chen-Pao Dragonite was really good into the meta right now, considering Chen-Pao's coverage is really good, and Dragonite, of course, being immune to everything Incineroar does pretty much is really nice. I think Gouging Fire is actually pretty underrated right now. I think this is its best usage, to be honest, as a bulky support, so to speak. It's mainly used to set up howls for other mons, but having fast breaking swipes and being able to outspeed everything with booster energy is really nice. Heat Crash actually does do quite a bit of damage because of how heavy the Pokemon is, so even with that only 4 attack investment, neutral nature, it still does quite a bit, especially after a health boost. Dragonite, pretty self-explanatory. I went pretty heavy on HP, not investing too much into speed since I thought I didn't really need much outside of extreme speed, and I think I don't remember clicking anything except extreme speed, so I think Dragonite performed quite well, and looking back on it, I think the games I didn't bring Dragonite was probably a mistake. Dragonite also, with good typing, serves as... It's not really a bulky pivot, but you can switch it into a lot of moves and immediately threaten with extreme speed, so pretty good mon. That is something I'll touch on later with the team, which is the lack of pivots. So Suicune, I needed a bulky water type, and I didn't really need one, but I thought that running this would be pretty beneficial for me because I can't be fake out. Or I can't flinch from fake out, and if there were taunt users on the field, I felt like I had enough status between Scald, Snarl, and Icy Wind to still provide value, even if I wasn't getting Tailwind up. And I went with Terra Dragon because I wanted to resist grass and electric specifically. I didn't ever Terra Suicune, but there were games where I think Terra Dragon Suicune would have been really hard to take down, so maybe something to look into in the future, but I think Suicune was surprisingly good, but maybe not the team for it. Chen-Pao, really self-explanatory. I mean, this is a very standard set. I'm running Adamant instead of Jolly. Yeah, I mean, there's not really much to say about it. Really good mon right now. It doesn't fit into every team, but in the teams that it does fit into, it does very well. So it did pretty well this bracket or round robin. I still am figuring out exactly if I want to run Jolly or Adamant, so we'll see in the future. And then these last 2 slots are the ones that I think I was most unhappy with. So you'll probably see it in my future Ogerpon sets or EV spreads, but I was running a lot of speed investment because one of Ogerpon's really bad matchups is Landers. But I think for this specific team, and especially for Teal Mass Ogerpon, I didn't really feel like I needed to run that much speed. I think I should have invested way more into bulk. And I think I did end up theorizing a new EV spread for it, but I didn't get time to implement it. So Ogerpon, unfortunately, kind of let me down a little bit, but um, yeah, it's kind of my fault for not EVing it more bulky, but I should have taken the speed EVs and invested in bulk. And then the max attack is because um, one of the really nice things about Teal Mask Ogerpon is that you could just tear it, get the speed boost from the embody aspect, and immediately knock out Fluttermane. So that was the main reason I was running max attack adamant, was because yeah, I could just have an immediate delete on the Fluttermane, which a lot of my team really struggled with between Chien-Pao, Dragonite, um, mainly those two, but even Gouging Fire sometimes struggles to deal big knockout damage to it. And the other thing was the Covert Cloak Defiant, I think, is actually very good for Teal Mask Ogerpon, but into a lot of these teams, I think it had a pretty bad matchup. And I ended up kind of needing it for certain mons like Fluttermane and Urshifu in particular. Those two, I felt very much pressured to bring it, even though it had some really bad matchup, as you'll see later. And Fluttermane here, I think, just did not. It really wasn't the team bird, I think. I think I just kind of slotted it in thinking it would do fine, but it really was not the team bird. I didn't really have anything to counter Tailwind, so once Tailwind went up, Fluttermane really struggled to do anything, especially since I was running Specs. I couldn't protect or anything. I still think Specs Fluttermane is the best set for it right now, but I think for this specific team, maybe a bulky booster energy set would have been better. But I think if I wanted to change this in the future, I would definitely replace. I'd probably run Ogerpon Wellspring if I was going to do Ogerpon, and then swap out Fluttermane for something else. Maybe replace Suicune, we'll see. I mean, it was. Suicune, I think, did well, but probably not like enough to justify the slot, I guess. I think offensively the team did very well, but the main issue I ran into was, and I kind of knew this going into the round robin, like on paper, the team is really not good at pivoting, like switching in and out. There's just so many mons that you don't want to take extra damage on. Like, I don't want extra damage on Fluttermane, Ogerpon, and Chien-Pao. So it really just leaves me with Suicune, Dragonite, and Gouging Fire to switch around. And a lot of the times I would lead Suicune or Gouging Fire. So it was actually very hard for me to pivot, which ended up really hurting me in the set versus Anthony, which I'll talk about later. But yeah, I think fun team. I think Gouging Fire is underrated. Chien-Pao, Dragonite really good, but we kind of already knew that. Yeah, that's probably it for the team. Next week I'll definitely be trying something else, so I'll probably tweak this team another time. So I'm gonna go straight into the match. Me versus Astter. Astter made some adjustments to the team, so no more Pachirisu. Raging Bolt was added, and I believe Incineroar was also added. So it's kind of a. I think the Pokemon on here are actually pretty solid. There's just not that like coherent of a game plan. I feel like there's just like it's good mons put on a team, which I think can work. There are a lot of teams that do very well in tournaments that are just called good stuffs teams, where they just put good things on their team. But even those teams usually require some meta knowledge and like learning how to pilot all of it against the in different combinations and stuff like that. So I think going into this, I was not. Let me see here. I think really, I thought Gouging Fire would really be good into most of this team. I felt pretty safe setting up howls for my team, so leading something like Gouging Fire Genpo, Gouging Fire Dragonite, even Gouging Fire Ogerpon would have worked. Yeah, all three of those would have been great. And then I did feel like I should bring... well, maybe not into this specific matchup, but Ogerpon actually does pretty well against Raging Bolt. Being able to follow me the Thunderclap is really nice because it completely negates that turn. And Ogerpon was mainly being used for deterrence to certain mons, and then otherwise I'd be clicking follow me. But I think I ended up just bringing Gouging Fire Chien-Pao, if I remember correctly, as the lead. Yeah. Gouging Fire Chien-Pao Dragonite, late game Flutter Mane, I think was the plan. I wasn't, like, if Latios came in first and set up Tailwind, I wasn't really concerned with it because I felt confident that I could stall it out long enough for Flutter Mane to win in the end game. And part of that is due to the Gouging Fire matchup being positive, me just getting up howls or slowing down other stuff with Breaking Swipe. Slowing damage down, not actually slowing it down. So yeah, Incineroar Latias, pretty good lead if you really need your Tailwind up. It's very hard to stop Fake Out plus Tailwind on a bulky mon like this. You'd have to use something like Covert Cloak, Tornadus with Prankster Taunt or something, but obviously I didn't have that, but I felt like this turn felt pretty... Like, if Tailwind goes up, then whatever, I don't really care. And I can pretty safely get a Howl off to boost Chien-Pao, which ended up being very beneficial, as you'll see. And there wasn't really too much damage threat into Gouging Fire, so I felt pretty confident just clicking Howl and Protect here. Protect covering for damage and for Fake Out. And if Fake Out went into Gouging Fire, then it's fine, honestly. Mainly because these two mons in the front, although it's really good for getting Tailwind up, doesn't have the greatest offensive pressure. Like, Incineroar can threaten Chien-Pao, obviously, but as you'll see, it can pretty quickly turn around. So I think Astter ends up launching... Okay, no, they do go for Fake Out Tailwind, so Tailwind does go up. And then I think from here, I know Latias is faster for sure, but I think even under Tailwind, Incineroar is not faster than at least Gouging Fire. I think it's not faster than Chien-Pao either, so I felt, again, pretty confident going for another Howl here because Breaking Swipe's not going to do too much. Heat Crash isn't really going to do too much. And getting the +1 on Chien-Pao ends up being really valuable for me here, so... yeah, I mean, here I am thinking about if I need the Terror or not, which I think I save the Terror for later in case I need it for Dragonite, and then just go for Howl Sacred Sword, I believe. Yeah. Because at this point, Latias can launch Draco Meteor or actually, I don't know if this one has Draco Meteor. Yeah, it does. Okay, Mistball, Draco Meteor, Tailwind recovers. So Mistball doesn't hit Chien-Pao, and if you end up using Draco Meteor on Chien-Pao, Chien-Pao will live because of the Focus Sash, and then you drop your special attack. So if that happens, then you've got pretty much a dead Latias on the field. That's not providing too much pressure, I guess. This is kind of the reason why I think especially after watching Neil's video on Latias. I experimented with the Icy Wind Modest set, and I do like it quite a bit more so far, at least. It feels a lot more consistent and has more presence. So yeah, +1 Chen Pao now against Tailwind, Raging Bolt, and Gouging Fire. I think Raging Bolt is still slower than Gouging Fire for sure, but I wasn't sure on Chen Pao, so. But again, I can't. Gouging Fire cannot use Heat Crash into either of these. It doesn't do that much, and Breaking Swipe will be super effective, but doesn't really do that much damage. So, the thing I do need to be careful here is for the Thunderclap on the Chen Pao, which is why I ended up going for Sucker Punch on the Latias, because Latias is most likely either switching or going for an attack. If it switches, then whatever, I don't take any damage that turn. And Sucker Punch will lock that slot down and ensure that if Raging Bolt clicks Thunderclap into me, then it'll fail. So Chen Pao comes in. Chen Pao mirrors are always really funny because most of them are running Ghost, so there's always a mind game of, are you going to Terra Ghost against my Sacred Sword, or are you just not going to do it? I tend to lean towards just using anything else, like probably your Ice Spinner on Chen Pao, oddly enough, just so you can reliably chip the Focus Sash away, because even if you do hit the Sacred Sword, it's not going to knock it out because of the Focus Sash. So I rarely click Sacred Sword straight into Chen Pao without scouting for the Terra first. And I can kind of cover for it here by doing what I think I end up doing, which is, click Protect on Chen Pao, and then I think I end up not doing this, right? This seems like a bad move in case. Oh, I do go for it. This is definitely a risky move because I probably would have protected there in hindsight. Because if Astter goes for Sucker Punch here into my Terra Ghost Chen Pao, then I think it's pretty donezo. So, in fact, I think they do end up going for Sucker Punch here. So I guess I was okay with sacrificing the Focus Sash, which is usually a very important item on Chen Pao. Oh no, they go for Sacred Sword, Gouging Fire. Okay. So clicking Heat Crash here is always pretty good because I can lock down. I can get rid of the Focus Sash and put it in range of another KO. Gouging Fire has done enough, so I'm fine losing it here. And getting the Raging Bolt at -2 is really nice. Ice Spinner is always going to KO here, +1 with double Sword of Ruin on the field. So yeah, I think it ends up working out actually better for what Astter did. Except I probably would have recommended clicking Icicle Crash just for more damage, or Ice Spinner if you have it. I think at this point, even like the last turn, I think the game is pretty much already over. I'm trying to think, what could they have done? Yeah, it's really tough because Raging Bolt can't really Thunderclap either of these mons. Because if Chen Pao clicks Sucker Punch, then the Thunderclap will fail. So, and my Chen Pao still has it still has Focus Sash. I guess you have to double into it, like click Sucker Punch and Thunderclap. But it's really risky because you're actually relying on a speed tie here, which probably comes up more often than you think with Genpal mirrors. It's part of the reason they're so weird is because of how much it can swing based on a speed tie or on the Terra. So at that point in the game, you're kind of already forced to make some really tough decisions. And this is definitely one of the reasons why having something to chip the focus dash is really nice, like maybe a bulky mon using Icy Wind or something. Or Fake Out works, but you have to kind of accept that you either are going to burn their Terra or they're just going to eat the Fake Out. Which is most of the time they're either going to switch or burn the Terra because they don't want to lose the focus dash. And getting flinched on Chanpao means you're wide open to being KO'd that turn. So, game 2, I think I really wanted to try Ogre Pawn here since it had the matchup into Incineroar. And it's still good against Samurott. Defensively good against Raging Bolt. And pretty decent against Sylveon. But I think... Okay, so I end up going Suicune. Suicune has a pretty good matchup here. And only that it's not really threatened by much. Like, it's just Raging Bolt, and even then I can always Terra Dragon. So, Suicune Ogre Pawn against Incineroar, Samurott. So I think they are trying to go for Fake Out plus Swords Dance. This is one of the things you got to be careful with Incineroar is taking note of the Defiant Mons on their team. Obviously, Inner Focus is also an ability that blocks Fake Out and Intimidate, but Defiant is really the one that you have to be more wary of because it like actively makes them stronger with the attack boost here. So that's part of the reason people run Teal Mask Ogre Pawn with Cobra Cloak is you get the Defiant boost and then you're immune to Fake Out, so you can immediately just superpower into Incineroar. And the thing that I was worried about here was the Terra from the Samurott. So that's why I didn't immediately click Ivy Cudgel into it. But I mean, in hindsight, if I had just done Ivy Cudgel right there, Samurott would have been KO'd. So that turn right there was mostly me scouting out a Terra, which I believe they end up not Terraing. But here, I think I'm deciding... I think I just take the free KO and do Incineroar. Because unless they're going to raw swap out Incineroar, then Superpower is going to either KO it or do massive damage to whatever walks into it, other than Sylveon. So I think this was a pretty good turn for me because yeah, it seems weird leaving the +2 Samurott on the field, but I really did feel like the Terra was either coming turn 1 or turn 2 here, so I'd rather just take a free KO here onto Incineroar. And then I think I launched a Scald into Samurott here. Decent damage, and of course the burn coming through is amazing. I think I actually end up living this Ceaseless Edge here because of it. But this is kind of what Suicune can really do, is just sit on the field, you get Tailwind up, or if you don't, then whatever, then you're just kind of allowed to sit on the field and debuff your opponents. It's really annoying to deal with unless you have a specific super effective mood. Pure Water is actually not easy to hit into unless you have really strong grass move or electric. Something like Rillaboom, Raging Bolt. I don't think even maybe Ogerpon Woodhammer would. Probably not Horn Leech would KO. So so let's see here. What am I doing? So yeah, this is pretty safe. My Suicune's in no danger of being knocked out, I'm pretty sure. Maybe a Ceaseless Edge plus Sucker Punch or Sacred Sword would have killed. But I felt pretty confident that they wanted to finish the Ogerpon off. Yeah, so this baits out the Detect, so that next turn, it seems kind of counterintuitive to play slower during your Tailwind, but Suicune is sitting on the field at full HP, so I can always get up Tailwind later, and this ensures that Samurott can't really protect itself next turn, so I'm trying to think why. Oh, because Ogerpon is faster than Qianfao, but Suicune is not. So this ensures that I give. Well, no, because Qianfao can protect here too, right? Yeah. So in hindsight, I didn't like that turn because I got rid of the Detect on Samurott, so I knew that Samurott could not protect itself this turn unless you go for the double. So in hindsight, I think I always just click superpower into it. So not the best turn for me. It should have been the other way around. You superpower the Samurott and then you Scald into Qianfao. So I guess the danger there is that if she Sucker Punches Ogerpon, then it's dead. But I still get a Scald off into Qianfao, which would have been pretty good. Because now I realize that I'm not in a good spot because the spikes end up destroying my Focus Sash, which is really important here. So I need to guarantee that I get some sort of speed control up so that I don't have to play the game basically of am I going to speed tie. And then I know I have Dragonite sitting in the back, but I don't know what her last mon is. So at this point, I think I need to take. Well, Samurott is low enough so that I could probably just get rid of it, even if I do extreme speed into it. I think the important part is getting rid of at least one mon here so that I don't have to guess on protects in the end game. Because that is the one thing that you could possibly lose to on an extreme speed Dragonite, is guessing Rod on protect too much in a 1v2, 1v3. So this turn right here is pretty important, I think. So Tailwind is up. So Suicune being faster than Samurott means that I can just go for it. And then here I can Sacred Sword pretty safely. I don't want to go for Sucker Punch because if I fail then we're in some trouble here. So the Detect keeps the Samurott alive, but I think Sucker Punch not doing too much here, even with the double Sword of Ruin. Sacred Sword picks up KO. I think you probably just Sucker Punch into the Suicune there. Just take the KO and see what comes next, I guess. Qianfao would still probably would have gone down, but so Sylveon being the last mon. So this pretty much ensures that as long as I get a little bit of chip into it, Dragonite will always win in the endgame. So there's no priority move on them, so because I have Tailwind up, I can pretty freely just double click into things. And Snarl takes a KO on Samurott anyway, so yeah, I think even the turn before might have been rough position to win from. Because even if Hyper Voice KOs here, whatever's the last mon is always going to be faster than Sylveon, because Sylveon inherently is pretty slow, and I think there's one more turn of Tailwind. Let's see. It might peter out this turn. But even if it did peter out, I think my entire team is faster than Sylveon. So I'm not sure it would have mattered. Yeah. So at this point, the game is pretty much over. I mean, there's no way Sylveon tanks this. So pretty close game. But kind of... I think the main danger of that game to me for late game was if there's a Terra Ghost Genpal. But because Samurott had to burn the Terra early, I kind of figured that Dragonite could pretty safely clean up the late game. As long as I didn't run into too many like Focus Sash and Protects. So that's about it for this set. So for the next one, this is another kind of issue with this team that I have, which is that I don't really have anything to stop Weather or Trick Room. So in this game, I believe my plan was I have to lead I think I had to lead Dragonite, because in case Hisuian, Lilligant, and Torkoal is the lead, I really need the priority to come through in order to stop that duo. So I think Dragonite has to come here. And then to Trick Room, I felt mostly confident as long as I had enough things that could function under Trick Room. So Genpal, Dragonite both work in Trick Room. It seems really odd bringing Ogerpon into a Torkoal Lilligant, but Ogerpon's really nice into Incineroar, Fluttermane, and it can redirect Raging Bolt. So all three of those are pretty nice for me. It's just the other flip side is that the Torkoal matchup is really bad. So and this is kind of why it ends up being like Ogerpon was important for the team in some ways, but into a lot of matchups it was just really not that good. And Fluttermane too. Like Fluttermane could not outrun anything in the sun, and under Trick Room it's just way slower and will get KO'd. So this is also, I'll point it out later, but this is the greatest play of my career, so to speak. But yeah, we'll see it later. So Gouging Fire, Dragonite versus Dusclops, Raging Bolt. So the only issue here is he actually has Haze on Dusclops, so I kind of just go for a Howl here because I know he's not going to Haze immediately. So getting that +1 immediately is still going to be really nice because I kind of assume he's going to go Trick Room here because I can't really stop it. I considered clicking Outrage, but I didn't want to get locked in to like a move that I wasn't sure was going to work consistently. Yeah, so this is more defensive actually because I didn't want to get immediately KO'd by Draco Meteor, so I change the typing and then just get damage into Raging Bolt. And then I'll take the +1, basically. Like, I guess I could have gone... No, Breaking Slug wouldn't have done enough, so... And this actually ensures that... well, it doesn't ensure, because he's going to use Haze next turn. Which is really cool, because... Haze has a really nice place in the metagame between Defiant boosts and drops from like Icy Wind or Draco Meteor and stuff, so being able to reset your own Raging Bolt stuff is really nice. Yeah, so I think I just take the damage and Dusclops here and then take the KO onto Raging Bolt. Like, even if he switches Torkoal in, which is I thought was going to happen, I get a lot of damage onto it. So this is the part I didn't expect at all. Is I did not expect him to bring Fluttermane into the Trick Room mode. You can do this if you're confident in your late game with Trick Room, because after the Trick Room ends, Fluttermane's a great sweeper. But yeah, I mean that was a 0 attack investment Gouging Fire Heat Crash. And the Howl Boost was down there because of Haze, so that's still a good chunk of damage for a support Pokemon to hit into Dusclops. So here's the actual turn. I don't want to switch. If you look at my back ones, I don't want to switch Chenpao in because I need the Focus Sash to survive the next turn, basically. And if I get doubled into, I basically die immediately. And I don't want Ogerpon to take any damage in case, because I think switching Ogerpon into a Fluttermane attack would have done too much damage to it, basically, to live. So my thought process here is that because I don't want to switch out, the only real option I have is to keep clicking Extreme Speed, which sounds really dumb, but it's like I don't want to take any damage, so this at least covers for Terra Fairy on Fluttermane if he goes for Terra Fairy plus Dazzling Gleam, but he ends up doing a switch predicting that I wouldn't stay in. So this ends up being the greatest Extreme Speed I've ever done. Basically just on a hard read that I technically ready with Terra there, but it ends up working out really nicely, even though I'm clicking Extreme Speed into 2 Ghost types. So yeah, getting rid of Raging Bolt there is pretty nice, because in the end game, Thunderclap would have been really annoying for Chenpao. So Fluttermane comes back out, and at this point I am basically just like, I'm just going to keep clicking Extreme Speed, because it's the same thing. I don't want to switch into the Fluttermane damage, and I'm actually fine with Dragonite going down here. It wastes another turn of Trick Room, and I can put in Chenpao and X2 Gouging Fire and just double protect and get the last turn of Trick Room off. So that I should not Howl. It should be Heat Crash into either Dusclops or Fluttermane. Yeah. So he ends up protecting with Fluttermane, which I think is smart, because I think Heat Crash probably would have done a lot of damage to it. Again, I'm still clicking Extreme Speed because I don't really have anything better to do. And the Heat Crashes are starting to add up here, pretty close to knocking out Dusclops. And he actually returns the Trick Room to normal with this, which is an interesting choice. I think this actually would have been pretty good if I had doubled into Fluttermane that turn, because if Dusclops lives one more turn to basically reset Trick Room and then set it again, I think it probably would have turned out a little bit differently. Because his endgame is Torkoal, right? And then Helping Hand Dazzling Gleam does take a KO. It does a lot of damage into Gouging Fire, but yeah, Dragonite did its job, and then Chien-Pao comes in, and Chien-Pao can always tank a hit here. Or I could protect, so. And now that we're out of Trick Room, Gouging Fire is actually faster than Flutter Mane, assuming he was not speed photosynthesis, which he is not. So I always get a free Heat Crush KO into Flutter Mane unless it decides to protect again. And then I can just pretty safely either protect or Sucker Punch the Torkoal. And the main reason that you Sucker Punch Torkoal here, even though it doesn't KO, is just whatever you can do to lower the eruption damage is actually really important. So, any amount, that's kind of why Torkoal I think is kind of hard to play with, which is the fact that you can't really switch it in unless it's a really, really safe switch. And it needs some sort of speed control, whether it be after you from Lilligant or Trick Room in general. But if you can safely get it into a position where it can eruption at full HP, it's like ridiculously strong. Yeah, unfortunately, quad resist on Gouging Fire, and this endgame's pretty much over. I mean, there's not much Torkoal can do at this point, so I think that part of that game did come down to I kind of get why he did the switch in with Flutter Mane, because he did predict the extreme speed, but he got his Flutter Mane in under Trick Room, which kind of lowered its effectiveness by a lot. Because then I can pretty safely click Heat Crashes into it and threaten KO. So this game, I felt like I didn't really expect him to bring the Trick Room mode again. So I thought he was going to go for the Sun mode, which is why you see me bring Dragonite here. And I still felt like I needed Ogerpon to deal with Incend, Flutter Mane, and Raging Bolt. Because I didn't want to get into a spot where Flutter Mane is the lead next to like Incend or something. And then if I don't have Ogerpon there, I'm in really big trouble. So I ended up leading the Ogerpon. And it ends up working out here. But it does look like we end up staring down another Trick Room mode. So at this point, I cannot threaten a KO into Dusclops. So I think I just, immediately go for Superpower. Try and pick up the knockout. And then I think I switch here because Dragonite it's a little too risky to click Outrage right now, so I'd rather take a switch in. So yeah, I end up switching into Gouging Fire over Chien-Pao because I don't want to lose my Focus Sash. And getting Gouging Fire next to Ogerpon means that I can use Howl to get some damage going. It does take the KO pretty quickly here, so that is nice. Trick Room comes up, and I do have double protects here, so I can kind of slow things down. So Raging Bolt comes in. Yeah, so at this point, I I think Ogerpon, I've kind of realized, has done its job here. Like, Fluttermane in the late game would be annoying, but I don't really have a good switch in right now. And so I kind of just resigned myself to the fact that Ogerpon is probably going to go down, but I can at least redirect the damage away from Raging Bolt while I get some damage in. So I can also switch here. Yeah, I do have a safe switch here because I could use Follow Me. So Follow Me Chenpo. Follow Me switch into Chenpo is pretty good, I think. He ends up switching Dusclops out and going into Torkoal. And I think he does read the Follow Me here. I think he goes for Draco Meteor. Or Weather Ball, yeah, that's right. So, big knockout there. It sounds weird, but it wasn't the worst KO. Like, it safely got me a switch in into Genpao, so we'll take it there. And at this point, I need to get as much damage down onto this Torkoal before it erupts. So that's why you see me do Terra Normal Extreme Speed. And then I think I'm deciding which slot I want to Extreme Speed into and which slot I want to Sucker Punch. I think this is probably the better play. So yeah, we're still under Trick Room, but both of my mons still function. I get a lot of damage into Raging Bolt, which it can't really, realistically you can't use Thunderclap here because of the way priority works. And this critical hit actually did matter. Or well, it kind of mattered, but maybe not in the same game-changing way. I think we talked about this later in that I think he doubled into Chenpao here. So it would have been a knockout, but I think I KO Raging Bolt next turn no matter what. And I still would have gotten a Sucker Punch off. So No, I don't think it would have mattered. Because I think, even if Chenpao's dead here and Raging Bolt's still alive, I think Extreme Speed just kills Torkoal. Even if he clicks Protect, then it's Raging Bolt versus Gouging Fire, I think. Yeah. It might have mattered, because if Raging Bolt's alive there and Torkoal protects, then Gouging Fire doesn't get that much damage into Raging Bolt. It's hard to say, honestly. Like, I think it might have mattered, looking back on this. We did calc it, and like I did need a crit to KO there. So that definitely picking up the KO there is nice. Super bulky Dragonite. Well, not super bulky, but lots of HP investment. And a pretty safe Extreme Speed here, I think. I guess he could have done Protect. And then KO. No, because Dusclops can't actually KO the Dragonite. It can't hit it. Because Nightshade is its damage, so even if you protect, you only really get a little bit of chip into Raging Bolt. Yeah, sun boosted heat crush, decent damage, and then it's pretty much over at this point. So I think that crit probably wouldn't have mattered, but it would have opened a small window for Ben to come back there. So it's RNG'd there, but yeah, it's tough. So yeah, the last one is 3 games long, and this matchup has always been really weird. I think this was easily my worst matchup because I didn't really have a reliable answer into the Wheezing mode, and I also didn't have the greatest matchup into the Tailwind mode. Because Whimsicott can just taunt Suicune and then I can't set up Tailwind. So I really had to rely on getting enough pressure in the first turn. Ogerpon here is pretty good into Instant Urshifu, but not super good into everything else. It's good into Iron Boulder if he doesn't tear it. Alright, let's see. So Ogerpon Fluttermane is probably the most... It's reminiscent of one of my favorite leads on my last team, which is Rillaboom Fluttermane. Ogerpon doesn't quite buy as much space because it doesn't have Fake Out, but it still has redirection and it still does very well into some of these mods. So I think he reads the follow me here, I'm pretty sure. But I think in this particular matchup, I don't really have much of a choice here. Because Mighty Cleave goes through Spiky Shield, and Ivy Cudgel isn't going to do much if he tears, which he did tear, so... yeah, the Whimsicott's a big problem for the team, actually. Like, obviously, if you're running Suicune, you kind of realize that you're weak to Taunt, and the rest of your team has to make up for it. But the rest of the team being not the best in Tailwind kind of hurts, so... Excuse me. Yeah, so not super happy with that Ogerpon turn. But there's not really... I mean, realistically, what else could I have really done here? Like, I guess if I had hard read it, I could have done Terra Fairy Moonblast, and that might have KO'd it. I don't actually know. But this does give me a switch into Dragonite. And, you know, this seems like the most obvious Extreme Speed Terra Normal in existence. But I don't really have another choice, right? Like, I don't know what's in the back, but if I let the Iron Boulder get another hit off, then I basically lose if Fluttermane goes down. So, I switch out Fluttermane for Gouging Fire here to see if I can stall some Tailwind turns out. And Incineroar's Intimidate. I mean, Incineroar coming in here in general is not bad for me. So, yeah, I think the plan here is that I'm not really threatened by that much, so I can at least get one Howl up and hope that Dragonite can put enough pressure on the rest of the Tailwind turns. I do think that in hindsight here, I probably need to get rid of Whimsicott. Because now that Tailwind is going, like, the last couple turns are here, I really needed to get rid of it before it set it up again so that Fluttermane can actually win in the late game. I think this turn right here. Like, if I target down the Whimsicott and get rid of it before Tailwind comes up again, then I think Flutter Rain's actually in a pretty decent spot to win endgame. But instead, I go in on the other mode, which is just I can just click more hells. Like, Moonblast isn't doing that much damage to me, so I'm hoping that +2 extreme speed just KOs everything else in the back. But it ends up biting me, I think, because once the Dragonite goes down and Whimsicott gets Tailwind back up, then game's pretty much over. So I think that was probably the game losing turn there. It's not killing the Whimsicott there. And here it's like I can't switch in Flutter Rain. And I can't KO the Whimsicott unless I double into it. But if I do that, then Urshifu definitely takes a KO. So I think at this point it's pretty much over. Like, I don't know what I can do here. I think I try to get a burn on Urshifu there with the Burning Bulwark, but it doesn't work out. Whimsicott gets more damage in. And I think at this point I kind of realize that I've made a mistake because Whimsicott is now in range of KOing Dragonite. And there's not really much I can do about it. Like, if I had at least broken the Focus Sash with Heat Crush in the last turn or the turn before that, then it probably would have been okay. But yeah. Is this something you need to be careful of, I guess, as a player, which is you can ignore supports, but make sure that whatever support they're bringing doesn't end up messing up your late game. Because most of the time I'm okay taking a 2v1 where it's a support and a carry versus whatever I have. But in this scenario, my endgame immediately loses to Tailwind. So this was a good switch because well, I guess it doesn't really matter. Both of those mons ignore Protect, and when Tailwind's up, it really it makes it really hard to deal with Tailwind if you don't have Protect. And now that my last priority mon is down, it's pretty much like Surging Strikes always kills here. Yeah. So, well played. I think the Moonblast addition to the Whimsicott really did make a huge difference. Yeah. And this is kind of when I realized that Specs Flutter Rain was... If I was going to run Flutter Rain, which I don't know I would in this team, Specs Flutter Rain was really not the best choice here. Because I think having a hard time pivoting is bad enough, but also not being able to protect there is really, really rough. Especially, like, it just all compounds because I don't have a great Trick Room or Tailwind matchup, so not having Protect against those is really tough. So I think this time I try my best to use Suicune to really not slow the pace down, but like see if I can control the game better. I think the Suicune Chanpao was for the Iron Boulder lead, which does end up coming. And so at this stage, I think I pretty much accept that I'm going to get fake outed. or sorry, Mighty Cleaved, but I still protect here just to not flinch and die immediately. And then I get the Tailwind up, which in hindsight, it's hard to say. I could have scalded into the Iron Boulder, but if he if he tarred right there and I didn't get a burn, then it's really bad for me. So he does end up tearing anyway, which means yeah, Fake Out gets blocked and then Mighty Cleaver hits, and then I get Tailwind up. Yeah, because this turn, if he protects, then I think I just die. I think the only thing I really could have done is done a hard read. No, not really. I think that was probably the most I could have done that turn, I guess. And here again, it's like every time I look at my back, I'm like, I would love to switch out here, but I just don't have anything to switch into. Like, I guess I could switch Dragonite in, but if he goes for Mighty Cleave, then I'm just like immediately dead pretty much. So I end up having to switch Ogre Pawn in, which is really unfortunate because it just immediately dies, I think. Yeah. So we get this Citrus Berry off, but at this point it's a 3v1 or 3v4, and my Chanfao's at 1 HP, so I think I really have to rely here on I have to rely on Suicune putting in some work here. So he switches out Iron Boulder into Urshifu. Double switch. So this turn still kind of works out for me because I break the Sash. I get some chip into Whimsicott, most importantly. But the Urshifu switch is really annoying because I can't protect against Urshifu. And even though it doesn't have Aqua Jet here, I can't really get that much damage off. So, let's see. I think I end up going for Skull into Urshifu. Yeah. Because the other two effects don't really matter that much. Maybe Snarl slowing down Moonblast damage would have been okay, but... and then I time out here, because I think I recognize that if I switch Dragonite in, I think it just might... If it takes too much damage, I just immediately lose. So this ends up working out decently. He does get Tailwind up, and I think I get a Scald Burn here, which is pretty nice. Yeah. Obviously, Chanfao goes down. And now it's Dragonite Suicune versus Incineroar, Urshifu, Iron Boulder. So I think even though Terra Dragon would be pretty solid here, I think in order to win this I need as much damage as I can squeeze out of Dragonite. So I obviously go for the Terra Normal here, and with that chip damage in, that KOs Urshifu. Although, judging by that, it probably wasn't heavy bulk investment Urshifu. I'm not sure. It probably wasn't, because I think last week it was a Scarf Urshifu, which is usually max speed, max attack. I tried to get another Scald Bird in, but doesn't really matter that much. And I have no way of protecting, so I just have to get as much damage as I can squeeze into this Iron Boulder. Scald at least Trunks Incineroar, right? So I think he goes for, Protect Flare Blitz is like the best you can hope for here, and KOing Dragonite with Flare Blitz. But I think my Dragonite barely lives, and then at that point I think Suicune is enough to 1v2 off of that. So yeah, it was a really shaky game, I think. Like, I don't feel that confident about that one at all. The endgame Dragonite worked out very nicely, but losing the Ogerpon so early really forced me to just kind of make do with what I had, I guess. So, this is the game right there. And game 3. Game 3 is so bad on my part, but we'll go over it anyway. I thought Suicune did pretty well, so I thought bringing it again would be fine. I pretty much lead pretty similarly. The problem is the Whimsicott immediately in. So my thought here is that I click Ice Spinner on the Iron Boulder because if he tears, it kills it. And if he doesn't tear, I still get chip damage into it. But the problem is with Suicune, I should have clicked Scald into it. And I ended up going for Icy Wind to chip off the Focus Sash, which, as I mentioned in Game 1, was really important. But here, it ends up just, like, absolutely screwing me not getting this Iron Boulder down. I think Tailwind Iron Boulder actually is a lot better than I gave it credit for a similar reason that Tornadus Urshifu was so good, is that obviously Urshifu really appreciates the Tailwind and the rain, but the other thing is you can't protect in front of Urshifu, which is like a really important tool to slowing down the Tailwind turn. So in this scenario, I don't have well, hold on, what did I bring in the back? Yeah, so I think this is just me maximum like copium, which is that I don't have Protect on Flutter Mane, and even if I did, I get killed by Mighty Cleave, and Ogerpon can't really stop anything about that. So I think my hope was that -1 Iron Boulder would be slower than Flutter under Tailwind, but it ends up not working out. I believe Anthony said he calced the speed, so Iron Boulder would be 1 point faster. So yeah, this was just like me going max copium in that my Flutter would be faster at -1 in Tailwind. And in hindsight, I think probably the play there is you bring in Ogerpon, Terra it to get the speed boost, and just go for a knockout on the Iron Boulder. But even then, like at that point, I think I'm in such a bad position anyway that it doesn't matter. Because I think, let's say I am faster in Iron Boulder here. I think this is the one way I get back into the game, is if I Terra Fairy the Flutter Mane, I probably pick up a double KO here, and then I have at least some sort of fighting shot against whatever's in the back, which I don't know at this point. But yeah, I mean, bad move on my part and good EV spread from him to outspeed there. So at this point, the game's like really over. Like, I don't have enough damage. Tailwind's already up against Suicune Champao, so it's just not like enough. Or sorry, Suicune and Ogrefon. Yeah, I think even at -2, it's pretty bad because Iron Boulder naturally is faster than Ogrefon, so pretty rough one. Yeah, so that looks like he is. I think his booster was on attack, so I'm guessing he's adamant, like heavy into attack, and also pretty high into speed. Because my Ogrepon was adamant 188 speed EV, so not the fastest, but Iron Boulder's base speed is only like 10 higher, I think, so it would have had to have been pretty heavily invested into speed, I think. Or maybe not. Maybe there's a lot of things. But I mean, it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. Like, even if Ogrepon was faster, there's no way it beats what I think is in the last two is Weezing Regigigas, so. So yeah, I mean, this whole team had some, like, huge mismatches, I think, because Suicune kind of needs time to burn things and Skull and Snarl and everything. And because I don't have any defensive pivot and I'm running 2 choice items, it really makes it hard to buy space for Suicune to get its stuff off. So, yeah, it's just, I think Suicune's not the right fit for the team, and I think Ogrepon and Fluttermane were also not the right fit. So I think if I wanted to change things, I run bulky Ogrepon Wellspring, and then the last 2 slots would probably be like, I could do like Rillaboom, maybe. Something to give me some more space to work with would have been really nice. And actually, yeah, I think a Fake Out Mon would have been really nice, because I ended up really struggling with the Whimsicott Focus Sash, not being able to chip the Focus Sash and KO it immediately. Ended up being really bad for me, so. He did have Terra Ghost, so that could have stopped that, but, you know, getting the Terror off on that is much preferable, so. But yeah, that's it. I mean, the last bit of the video is hand footage from Ben on the other game, but I don't believe that was a full game, so I'm not really going to go over that. Yeah, I think everyone's making improvements. I think Aster's getting the hang of battling. Anthony made some really smart adjustments on his mons. Ben is refining. The Raging World edition is actually so big for his team, so I'm glad he put in the time. I mean, I couldn't have done it, but putting in the time to complete a playthrough of Scarlet just to get Raging Bolt is actually really big for his team, so. But yeah, I think that's it. Next week, I think at the very least, me and Anthony will be changing teams up, so you'll probably see some fresh new stuff coming. So I'll catch you later.